Starting this recording, and then going to put it on Facebook. All righty. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday morning, this very last day of summer, as I understand it, this full moon time. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for your patience with my Zoom learning curve. I'm Seth Weiner. I'm a program officer with the Life Comes From It Fund. We're a small organization focused on restorative justice, transformative justice, land-based healing, and indigenous peacemaking. And this is our third of seasonal webinars we've been doing to uplift some of our grantees and our teachers and leaders in these fields. And this is just a very, very special time to welcome these four grandmas to speak to us today about their experience in the work that they do in peacemaking and healing and restorative justice in different parts of the world, coming from different backgrounds. Each of you grandmas has been an inspiration to me in my own life. So I just feel incredibly honored and grateful to you for being and for being here with us today. I see we have many people who are joined us. We can't hear them, but to all of you who have called in, please know that you can raise your hand if you'd like to say something at some point, or you can message me with a question and we'll make time for more open conversation later on. And to all you who are watching this recording in the future, thank you for making the time. So I'll make time for each of you to introduce yourselves individually as we go on. I'm gonna turn it over first to my adopted auntie, Cheryl Demmert Fairbanks, who is a judge, Tlingit-Tsimshian, Alaska Native. You're there in New Mexico. Judge Fairbanks has been a leader in the field of indigenous peacemaking for a long time, and she has more accolades and accomplishments than I will try to enumerate here. But I just say thank you so much that you put together a PowerPoint. So I'm going to try and manage that for you, and I'll just allow you to say anything you'd like to say before we do that. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. And it's good to see all the grandmothers, and and hello to our audience. If you could put in the chat where you're from and the land acknowledgement. And for me, my land acknowledgement is I'm living in New Mexico. My homelands are Southeast Alaska, the Hina-Kwan on Prince of Wales Island, and Ketchikan. I'm Tlingit-Tsimshian, but I make my home over here in New Mexico on the beautiful East Mountain, the Sandia Mountain, the home of the Sandia Pueblo and the Tamaya, and Gunesh Chish for allowing me to be here on this beautiful fall day where the starting to get a little cool in the morning. And I went out for my walk and just was saying my blessings for today, and that we would have a good session, and that the grandmothers that Ganesh Chish to Seth and Life Comes From It for honoring us. Sometimes grandmothers are put away somewhere else, and so this is a good time that our message is shared with everyone, and especially all the different generations and people from all over. And at the end, I assume we're going to stand for some questions or reflections. And so, Seth, whenever you're ready, I'll start with my PowerPoint.
Okay.
And please be patient with us as grandmothers. We're technologically challenged, so we get all nervous, and then I think we add to our anxiety. But I put together this PowerPoint, and
Can
at
you
first
see
I
my
called it.
screen?
No.
Let's see.
Oh, maybe I have to accept something.
There we go.
Okay,
How's
there
that?
it is. Yeah.
Okay.
At first I called it, "Where are the grandmothers?" And the more I went through and prepared my presentation, I go, no, we are the grandmothers. We are here. And one of my cousins from Prince of Wales, Dewey Scan from the Tukwon AD, when we had lost one of our cousins, he shared this with me because we were in such grief, and the opposite clan comes in and helps us with our grief. And he said, don't worry about saying anything. Your presence is everything. And so today, having you here, I acknowledge that your presence is everything. And to my other grandmothers on the panel, Ganashchish Igawayachan, which is thank you for being here. And yes, we are strong and we have courage. And so today I'm going to share a little bit about circles and how we can really work with the generations and share our gifts of wisdom. And I'm going to put this up. Seth, can you see that?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And so, next slide. And so these are our guiding principles for me as a grandma. And Seth, I think you went one slide too far. If you could go back one. And one of the things that we're doing is really reaffirming our own values, our own culture, and our own tradition. And we had been facing the wrong way. We had been looking to the outside for all our answers due to the real colonist assimilation policies of the government. And so we just had to turn around and go inward. And we also have to understand the impact of federal policies and how that really impacted not only us individually, but our families and our community. And one of the things, and it's number 3, understanding the significance of oral tradition and our native language as our common law. And the oral tradition has really been the glue that has kept us together against the strongest country in the world, the United States of America. Oh, that's my sister calling me to check in. Sorry. And our native language is medicinal. During the pandemic, especially, I've done a lot of work in revitalizing Tlingit, because I grew up in a Tlingit home where Tlingit was the first language. And then re-educate the educated. Many of us have had both the traditional Native American education as well as our American education. And with our education, we can now use that as a tool to really protect our way of life and our sovereignty. And so the last one is really a call for consensus, cooperation, comedy, and unity. Next. And so these are the policies that are based on really assimilation and termination. And I'm not going to go through each one of them, but really the removal from our homelands, the development of reservation to really civilize the Indian and isolate the land-based. A lot of military tactics and style of living was imposed on us. And the allotment era was really, the government wanted us all to be farmers. We're from a fishing family, and our garden is the ocean. And this was a way to really justify the takeover of Indian land. And the IRA era was around the 1934. That was where we replaced our traditional governments with the American separation of powers, constitutional governments. And the termination era was one of the most difficult eras, and that's extended state civil and criminal jurisdiction into Indian country, where we had a lot of loss of language, movement to the cities, and that was called relocation, relocating us so that we would assimilate into the greater America. And also a lot of regulations, the Indian Child Welfare Act, the Indian Civil Rights Act, and we are really the most regulated people in regulated citizens of the United States. And self-determination was a breath of fresh air under this particular law. Everything was failing, and our statistics were bad, and the government made a shift to self-determination, where we would be not just at the table, but our voice would be heard and our decisions would be understood. And we began to protect our way of life. And we're in this era of self-governance, which I love because it's really a revitalization of our traditional governments and our language. So all that has had an impact on us, especially us as grandmothers. We've had that historical trauma from those policies, and we've had actual trauma from some of our experiences growing up, vicarious trauma, seen a lot, and then this pandemic overlay. So that has put us in a very vulnerable position where we really have to pay attention to what's going on and how can we as grandmothers make a difference? How can we model that? How can we share what we learned from our grandmothers? And so next, my grandmother, both of my grandmothers are named Lillian. One is Tlingit, one is Tsimshian. And it's really kind of interesting because they're both half Tlingit and half Russian Finn, and then half Tsimshian and half German Jew. And so in America, in Indian America, we were forced to do this blood quantum thing. And it's really had an impact on us. I don't think any other ethnicity or nation in the world divvies it up into sections and quantums. And so I say that because I really was blessed by my grandmothers. And one of the things they taught us is these children are your young parents, and how we treat our children is how we will be treated when we return to our childhood as elders. And I could really see that. And I looked at some statistics, and it's interesting that Native Americans have a higher rate of grandparent care, where grandparents are taking care of the family. And they're giving 56% more than any other culture where they're taking care of the family. And sometimes families are in crisis, and grandmothers are the first ones to step in. Sometimes individuals' parents are incarcerated, and grandmothers are the first ones to step in, or there's substance abuse issues, or there's teen parenting or unemployment. And it's interesting, the statistics show that most likely the grandparents, most are female. They live on the reservation, they're multilingual, they're not working. Some have no college education at all. I know my grandmother, Lillian on the Tsimshian side had an American education, but my grandmother on the Tlingit side did not. And she could only speak Tlingit, and she would bring out her little book to try to say words. And it was interesting. At first, it was kind of embarrassing to me, but today I feel really empowered because both of them really opened the doors and really gave us the confidence to get out there and get an education. And so there's often a high number of people living in a household. And this is a picture that really speaks for itself. And today this has become even more prevalent as Deb Haaland opens up the investigation on the boarding schools within Indian country. Next. And so one of the laws I talked about was the Indian Child Welfare Act. And it was passed because 1 in 4 children were removed from their homes in 1978. Today, that removal rate is the same or it's increased in some areas. And 85% of our kids are being placed in non-Indian homes. And after 40 years of ICWA, our children remain overrepresented in state foster care placements across the country. So we have about 12,000 kids in foster care and in state jurisdiction and about the same in tribal jurisdiction. So we really have to pause and rethink what we're doing because we've had that institutional, I went to boarding school, we have that institutional family parenting that's not working. We also have disproportionate incarceration. There's 26,000 Native Americans in US jails. They've been sent there at a rate 38% higher than the general population. In Alaska, Native Americans are 16% of the general population, and Native Americans, Alaska Natives, make up 40% of the adult inmates. You can see the disproportionality there. And it's interesting that between 1996 and 2000, they're a little bit old statistics, but I couldn't find anything more recent. Incarcerated white males rose 6%, and for Alaska Native men, it rose 23%. And what was very alarming is in the female population, the white females rose 26%, and Alaska Native women went up 41%. So as grandmothers, what was happening to our kids? What's happening to our families? Next. And in addition, we have the missing and murdered Indigenous women, where we have 5,711 missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I went back and checked that statistic because I thought that could not be, but it is factual. And it's interesting that we have this many people missing, and on the news, one American was missing and got all that attention over the weekend. And so you can see that we're marginalized, we fade, we get invisible quite fast. Next. And out of this, our oldest victim on the MMIW, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous, the oldest is 83, the youngest with a baby less than 1 year old, 29 is the median age. And that came from the Seattle Indian Health Board. Next. Should we continue doing more of the same? And so we as grandmothers have to become more empowered, and our voice has to be heard because we're so used to being quiet. We're so used to sitting and listening. Next. And I'm not saying that listening is bad, but we are the grandmothers. And yes, we can make good choices, and we can bring that message to the other generations to make good choices. And this, I loved, I want to talk about that at the end, but I like this visual in terms of the young woman and the 5 generations, 1, 2, 3, going up all the way to the grandmother, great grandmother. And we're going to have a peacemaking colloquium that's intergenerational. But I thought that was just a beautiful visual to share. Next. So the role of the grandmother, yesterday we were leaders, we were wisdom bearers, keepers, sharers, we're very spiritual. I always wondered why my grandmothers were in prayer all the time. Now I get it. And we were responsible for sharing and living the culture. And we were very much caregivers. Today, same thing. Next. On this, when I say core values, these are our core values, our way of life for the Tlingit people on Southeast Alaska. So discipline, respect for self, patience, humor, hold each other up, speak with care, listen, iguayachan, be strong and have courage. And I really like the hold each other up because we're at a time now when we're not doing that like we used to. And these core values become the foundational principles for who we are as grandmothers. So let's shift to something that's more sacred, that's more holistic, that's issue focused, that's facilitated and transitions to change. And when I say sacred and spiritual, it's where everyone has a chance to speak. Someone doesn't have to speak for you. And we have to go figure out what is a good approach to wellness and healing. And really, what is the issue here? And we have to be gentle on the person and tough on the issue. Sometimes we're tough on the person and we don't even know what the issue is. And we can do that through our indigenous wisdom and language and the core values. And it's not the Indian problem, it's the Indian solution. And so we're going to begin to put, and we are putting the sacredness back into our families and communities through the use of the circle. Next. And so when we put the sacredness back into the family, and for us, extended family is very, very important. We place values on our ways, and we turn around and we shift to draw upon our own values, our own traditions and law, but in a contemporary context. And that's the hard part. How do you bring it into 2021? So grandmothers can bring the cultural wisdom. We will provide unity. We can bring our traditional American education together. We provide resources, often including dollars. We really preserve the family's intergenerational focus and loving kindness and discipline. We're the grandmothers. We cannot go without saying that. We love that discipline also. And I use this example of this grandmother in South Dakota, where she just took, her role as a grandmother, and she was outraged at the removal of her granddaughter, and she really rose to the occasion to get the kids back, and she fought to preserve the family. And we're having to do that across the nation. Next. And so with our wisdom, we really don't have a concept of termination of parental rights. A lot of times our children know who their parents are, and sometimes they reunite with them in later years. And we really like our children to be placed in the family, extended family, or community, because if not, they begin to lose their identity. And it really changes how children think about family and tribe. And then if they're placed outside of our tribal context, they really don't belong in the Indian world or the non-Indian world. And that really results in a lot of difficulty, a lot of social ills, including high suicide, school dropout, substance abuse, and incarceration. We have statistics that show our kids in foster care get into the juvenile system. They age out of foster care. From juvenile, they go into the adult system, and boom, they're incarcerated. And a lot of are men and women who are in prison, have been through the foster care system. Next. And so I say sovereignty begins at home. Together, let's put the sacredness back into our families, extended family, really pay attention to that, and communities through language, stories, and songs, revitalizing our core values through ceremony and the sacred circle. And remember, be gentle on the person and tough on the issue, and make good choices. Next. So we can shift. And my dad always said, if we have our Indian language, we'll always have the customs and laws of the tribe, and we will know how to relate to each other. And I found during the pandemic, my native language has been very healing and very medicinal. Next. And in the circle, and one of the things I've learned is that the circle is very powerful. It's very simple. It's very ancient. It's very indigenous. And it really allows us to experience each other as equals. And each person is the same distance apart, and no one is higher or lower. It's a true equality, and it brings about equity. And a group of people in a circle become united. It has no beginning or no end. And the energy really forms in the circle to build resolution. I wish we would have time to do a circle. And in face-to-face in a circle, you really begin to have that ripple effect, bringing about change. Next. And so in the circle, we use the basket as our talking tools. So you only speak when you have the basket. And this basket has a lot of tears and laughter. It's very symmetrical. It's the mind, body, and spirit of the weaver. It carries the tradition of the tribe. And each part of the weave, my grandmother was a basket weaver, and she always said, you're this little part right here. Don't get so big that you think you're the whole basket. But without this little part here, it's flawed. So you're very important to this beautiful weave. You're the design. And this basket represents the sovereignty, and we use it to pass it from person to person. And maybe we'll use it as we go into Q&A. Next. And so this is the peace circle. On the left is the procedure. On the right is the rules. And the main rule is the rule of respect. And speaking with care and respect, and only one person talks at a time, and you only talk when you have the basket. Listening is more important sometimes than talking, and consensus is critical, and passing is okay. And one of the rules that we came up with, it's okay to agree to disagree, but with respect. And often that's the hardest thing to understand, because often when we disagree, it's all or nothing. That's me. Okay, you disagree? Goodbye. I'm out of here. So let's learn the rule of respect and to agree to disagree, but with respect. Next. And so the UN UNDRIP has really recognized our rights, our human rights, to really use our own methodology, our own ways to make sure our custom and rules are used. Next. And these are Graham's words for extreme self-care, especially during the pandemic. Always to have an awareness of just to check in. How are you doing? That's the A. I call this the ABCs. And awareness is really the most critical, because we work long hours. All you have to do is look at your office and car. And I'm like, oh God, please don't look at my office. Please do not look at my car. I'm working on that this week, but the main thing is the B, the balance of the mind, body, and spirit. And then the connection, and that's related to our iguayachan, having courage and strength to stay connected. And this is especially important during the pandemic. Next. And so buffers turn around and shift to our core values. Humor is important. It builds, it sends off endorphins. It builds our immunity. I checked on that. So, you know, we have that Indian humor and we always have to have that. The respect, be an active listener, get good sleep, develop good friendships, see who's draining your energy. Pay attention to that, develop healthy boundaries. What I was doing was I was doing barriers instead of boundaries. And hobbies during the pandemic, I've really worked on my painting and beadwork, taking some time off and really having a healthy team environment, working together. And in Indian country, it's just not self-care. It's the collective self-care that really brings about health and healing. So it's a little bit different. But during this pandemic, I say not just self-care, extreme self-care. So really work at it. Next. And so this is kind of a lot, but in a nutshell, it says maintain connection, take care of your body, mind, and spirit, because stress really has an effect on your health. Take a break, unplug from the news and social media. Make yourself a priority, stand in your own sacred circle. And that's something I learned from one of my Ho'oponopono therapists. And she always said, when you're standing in your own sacred circle, you're fine, you're balanced, you're connected. When you're outside your own sacred circle, you're crying, you're mad, you're concerned, you're, you know, so when you're in that state, take a minute to step back in your own sacred circle and remember just how magnificent you are and say that. So go outdoors. I like the tree bathing that the Japanese do. And I grew up in the rainforest, so we always were around a lot of trees. Mindfulness, music really balances your spirit. And give yourself permission to feel, release, and see the rainbow. Breathe. And this, let's stop just real quick, okay? We're going to breathe 3 times. Ready? Breathe in. Hold it. Let go, let go, let go. Lower your shoulders. Breathe in. All the way down, all the way down, all the way down. Hold, hold. Blow out. Breathe in. Hold, hold, hold. Breathe out. Close your eyes. Stand in your own sacred circle. Stand in your own magnificent. That was so fast. And I always feel better after I do that. Of course, napping is okay because it boosts your immune system. Avoid self-medication. There's always a risk of drug and alcohol use, abuse. Ask for help and make good choices. And set up a good support system, but be your own best friend. And we already talked about hobbies and setting priorities. Oh, and the last one is call your gram to check in. You'll get a lot of goodness out of that. Next. So it's safe for you to rest, take a nap. Next. Self-care, wellness, mindful, focus, energy, resilience, healthy coping. Next. And really focusing on our core values through our songs, our music, our stories, our dances, our ceremonies, our community circles of healing, our peace circles, our dispute resolution circles. They're preventative, and yes, there's intervention, but it really leads to transformation and healing because we are resilient people. Next. And so I ask you to think about peacemaking, about the power of that circle, because it really helps with the family to bring healing, not just to the individual, but to the family and of course to the community. Next. And you can be the one. You can be the one that makes the difference. You can be the one that causes this ripple effect. You can be the agent of change. Next. And these individuals are agents of change. They're in our community canoe. And Iguayachan, they're strong, they have courage, they're protecting, they're living. This is the biggest peace circle. When I'm in a canoe, I feel so balanced. I feel so aware of my mind, body, and spirit. I feel so connected to the Dikiyanka'u, the one most high, and I feel so grateful. Next. So my dad always said, if the women are taken care of, the children will be, and our tribes will continue in perpetuity. And there's a grandma, my mom, Alice, surrounded by some of her grandchildren. She had many more, but I just thought this brought music to my heart, and it helped me balance and really appreciate the role of being a grandma. Next. So I say sovereignty begins at home, because there's a lot we can do. We don't need $1 million grant. We can just begin to reaffirm our core values, use our language for songs, stories, and ceremony, and we can make good choices. Next. Thank you, Ganesh Chish, which means a Tlingit thank you. Iguayachan means be strong and have courage. And then I would like to invite you to this intergenerational peacemaking, and it's going to take place soon, the 29th and 30th. And it's going to be intergenerational wisdom and healing into the future. And so thank you, Seth. I think I went way over my time, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Auntie Cheryl, Grandma Cheryl. It's really, really beautiful. Thank you for putting all of that together for us here today. And really, thank you for those breaths. I'm feeling renewed. So, and thank you for all these comments, I'm seeing go by. Lots of gratitude. And so I'm just going to move us along. I don't know how to go forward. Maybe one of our other grandmas here is feeling ready. Grandma Margaret, I see you unmuted yourself. Maybe I can call on you. Can you hear me? Can we hear you?
Yes.
Oh, good. So I just to say a word, Grandma Margaret, you're somebody who has been a leader in your community. You've been bringing together, your ancestors, as a Northern Cheyenne and Southern Cheyenne person, and conducting ceremonial healing for people, and in the face and the wake of really extreme historical trauma, and then even beyond Cheyenne people. You've been with the 13 Indigenous Grandmothers International Council. You've been a grandma to the world. So you brought a lot of healing, a lot of medicine all around. So I just want to say that about you, so everybody here recognizes that, and just say thank you again for being here. And we're really grateful to hear from you, whatever you'd like to share.
I greet you in Cheyenne, and my name is Margaret Behan. And my first name is Red Spider Woman. So I want to say thank you to You, Cheryl, I met you many years ago in Albuquerque on the golf course. I was caddying for my husband, Pablo Quintana. And grateful I could hear your wisdom and be a witness to your movement here. And also my fellow 13 grandma member, Mona Polacca, and Bonnie. I'm good, feeling good to be here with the three of you. So I'm really excited about this, hearing these words, you know, being expressed. And a lot of times with my own family, I tell them you're the speaker of the family. You're the leader of the family. You're the cook of the family. You know, my children, I tell them, my nieces and nephews, and remembered my grandmother saying this in reference to what you're saying here, Cheryl, pointing out each person, their expertise, what we were good in. And I learned it from my grandmother and grandfather. They had a gunny sack and they used to pull out gifts for us, like a top for my brother. And he said, how did they know that I wanted a top? And my sister, the comic books that came in 10 packages, and the grandma and grandpa had that. So they studied us and they were really keen on, you know, our language, where we were at in the fab, in the trends as we were growing up. And then my parents would come home from working as migrant workers. And then they would pick up their part, you know, what they found that was new out there in the world, and come back and share it with us. Even my grandparents were really proud of them, you know, that they could see the world in a different way. So bottom line, I think there was a lot of hurt that was going on. And grandparents were the ones to hold us in those circles of ceremonies. And the way that you expressed the language was really medicine to us, calming, it soothed us, and we didn't really have to feel like we had to worry about what was next, you know, when they were there talking to us, calming us. And I feel like now the way you say is the gifts that I'm bringing forward. Even my sister, you know, she just passed away 4 months ago. And she would say, why do you live the way you live? Why are you talking why are you doing that? And she said, most all of us forgot already. And then my aunt comes along and she's talking, and then she said, oh, I see. She said, my mind is going to a different place of imagination, she says. I can imagine when my grandparents did this, or my aunts and uncles, and now it's not being carried on, but you and Margaret are carrying it on, she tells my aunt. And to catch that, you know, was really important now today. And my sister is gone now, you know, and now it's just my oldest, my aunt, you know, elder. So I feel like I have to run these things by her and make sure, you know, are we still intact, you know, are we still coming along? And she says, you know, the best that we can, never give up. Don't say we lost anything. We're still here. And because I hear our people saying, you know, we're losing our language. And say, no, if we know one word, we're not lost. We haven't lost our language. And now they're putting money into our languages so that we can save them. There's all kinds of ways of saving them. And that's the exchange of the Northern Cheyenne, the Southern Cheyenne. And I'm really pleased, you know, at this time to share this with you, that we're still here, and I'm working on completing the documentary. The deadline is July 2022. I have found a filmmaker to complete this, and it has been very painful. So it's been like the women say, you're expecting, you know, you're carrying this, and then you have to deliver it. So I'm really excited about this. It gives me such joy to think I'm gonna have something for my people, you know, something for my family, you know, that they'll take off on and be proud of our own heritage, who we are. So I want to thank you like that. And I really appreciate Seth, you know, and your sensitivity in the way that you bring us together, you know. It just almost makes me want to cry, you know, that the young person could take this time to spend with me, you know, with the rest of us. And I tell my nephews and my nieces that too. When they come here, I live out in the country in Oklahoma, Calumet, Oklahoma. And it's very hot here. Yesterday was 100 degrees, and we just complete the Southern Arapaho Sundance. It had been put off, and then finally, you know, I had said to my nephew, what are we waiting for? And he said, yeah, what are we waiting for? We might as well go forward, you know, and do this ceremony. And so it's fall time. They usually have Sundance in the summertime. So we just completed that. I feel really good. I feel happy, you know, probably my ancestors are too, that we still remember to make an altar on the earth, you know, because the earth really needs this time, this whole symmetry that's going on in the world, you know, that we're meeting at these places. I really appreciate it. I feel like it's accomplishing a little bit, you know, a little bit more. And this viho some nishuats na niametunan. I had to say those words because we use them, you know, in the ceremony and when we meet each other in group, you know, yesterday at the camp, sharing food, you know, can't really translate it directly in English, you know, but to make it like you're talking, Cheryl, and this circle about how we are as indigenous people to this land, Americas, you know, and so I really like it. I'm really touched. I'm really pleased, you know, and happy. And this afternoon, I will be going to a community college, you know, that our people has accepted a part of. We live in Oklahoma. There are 39 different tribes. And through the weekend, they had a grand opening of the first people museum here. 39 tribes will be in that museum. And one wing, they ask if they have the 13 grandmothers, you know, there's one from Oklahoma. So they're dedicating one wing to the wisdom of the grandmother's book. And so Henrietta Mann and I are going to do the book signing there. So I'm really proud to be acknowledged, like this, and to share with you, we're moving, in a right way, in a good way, and going to this community college, to speak my language and to share my language with them. So thank you very much.
Gosh, geez.
Gosh, geez, brings tears to my eyes. Listen to you, Grandma Margaret. Thank you for your heart. So grandmas Bonnie and Mona, maybe I can pick on one of you. Bonnie, you unmuted yourself.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I just want to say, I just try to say something about each of you. You're over there in Oakland, California, and you're really a leader for people, including your family. I had the good fortune to get to meet some of your family, your boys and their children. Hope it's okay I share, Bonnie led a circle for her. She had a family reunion, and like Cheryl was describing these circles, she led one for all the generations of her family that came together, for healing right there, celebration, in their family. Really is inspiration to me to see how you do that. And then in the wider community, you go into prisons, you work with people come home after they've been incarcerated. You've been really a leader in the Black community there in Oakland, along with your brother. And then for the Ahimsa Collective, an organization that life comes from it is a part of. You've been a real matriarch. So I just celebrate you, for the wisdom that you carry, and for the leadership you provided in this restorative justice movement and beyond that. So just say thank you again for being here. I'll stop talking now.
Thank you, Seth. That was very gracious. And thank Grandmother Cheryl and Grandmother Margaret, who I've listened to, and Grandmother Mona, who I'm looking forward to hearing from. And I just want to say that this is an honor, an unexpected honor. When Seth invited me, I thought, I can't be on a panel, not with these wise grandmother who was born and grew up in a tradition of love and caring and peace. So of course, I was reluctant initially and honored, but it was very humbling experience. So I am deeply humbled and deeply appreciative of this invitation and this opportunity. Cheryl and Margaret have both said everything I wanted to say. But we're talking about restorative justice, which is not named in most tribes. It is a way of being. It's a way of moving through the world, honoring and respecting and listening. And when it's done in circle, it's a sacred process. So I've been trained as a facilitator. And, it's pretty simple to facilitate in terms of rules and structure. However, it's the experience of being in a circle and watching the emergence of someone's authentic self come forward. I have been going into the prisons since 2011. I began at San Quentin. Well, now it's hard to even remember the name. I've been in several prisons. And one of the things I've learned is that the men that are incarcerated, although they've been demonized and called monsters, once treated with kindness and gentleness and love and acceptance, who they truly are, can emerge. And I have seen transformation in prison that I have yet to see where we are told we are free. Because the freedom begins in your heart. And most of the people in our prisons are people who have been subjugated and taught that they have no value. And if you believe you have no value, that's how you behave. So I've seen the most monstrous curses become a saint. And all that happened is who he really is, authentically emerged. And that comes from having compassion and loving and knowing.
Ani, I'm so sorry to
that
stop you.
each and
I'm hearing a little echo. I think maybe are you unmuted on one, and or maybe
Yeah, I'm hearing the echo too.
are you still hearing it?
there it stopped.
No.
Stopped.
It
Now we hear you.
stopped.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Yeah. So the compassion that I think is necessary begins with listening. Hearing what someone says and recognizing that that is their story. And everyone's story is valuable. Even if the story is not the truth. In a safe container, the truth will emerge. Because ultimately, healing comes from truth. The truth of who we are, the truth of what we practice, the truth of what we believe. And as the lies expand into the truth of being, healing occurs. I have healed my own family. Seth talked about having a family reunion. Well, the Ahimsa Collective, which I'm a core member of, is the most gracious organization I can think of, or that I've known. And there's a retreat center that they have that I invited my children and grandchildren who were available. I'm the mother of 4 sons, the grandmother of 15 children, and the great grandmother of 3.5. One is still in utero. And yes, I do circles with them. I realized maybe 4 or 5 years of going into the prisons and, supporting men and being responsible and accountable for the harm that they've caused. I realized that had to apply to me. So I invited my children to meet me in circle once a week and let me heal the harm that I caused in parenting. It was the most profound experience I've had. And it was also difficult because being the perpetrator and the facilitator doesn't work. I actually convinced my brother to take facilitator training and facilitate us. And my brother and I have been facilitating ever since. But what I want to say about restorative justice, is that it's a sacred process. And when it's entered into as a sacred process, it takes a while, because as I listened to the grandmother speak, I felt a bit of sadness that I was never indoctrinated into my ancestral laws and ways of being. So I had to borrow theirs. But what I learned is that this isn't a practice for me. It isn't a tool for me. It is a way of being for me. It's a way of moving and walking through my life. And I try to instill that awareness by just being with the men in circle or the community in circle. And being with them has been really transformational for me, because what I recognize is there's goodness and beauty in us all. We certainly have to learn that. We have to be able to see that in ourselves and in others. So the first thing I have to do as a facilitator is, do my own work, heal my own trauma, heal my own wounds. That's the first thing I had to do. And that's an ongoing process, I find. But what I have found is that mind, body, and spirit is all connected. The oneness is so apparent in circle work. I often tell the men in my circles to think of every word being spoken, going into a huge cloud above our heads, and pulling from it the wisdom that is there, that resonates and heals them, because it heals us all. We've been indoctrinated into an autonomous separation that isn't real. We need one another. We need to feel safe with one another. And we definitely need to heal our wounds, because most of the men that I have encountered in prison have committed reenactments of harm done to them. If not a reenactment, at least a response, a reaction to what has happened to them. And it's our children that have been harmed and grew into men and never healed and never had anyone to talk about the harm to. Oftentimes in circles, you hear what has never been said before, because the men were too afraid, too ashamed to talk about it. And just listening and not judging is healing. Now, there's nothing that as a facilitator I do that really heals anyone. I just support them as they heal themselves. And the beauty emerges, and the beauty is beautiful to see. It's wonderful to see men who walk in the door initially with their head hung, dull eyes, body language completely defeated, and gradually see them straighten up and their eyes light up. And they begin to recognize that they aren't throwaways, that they have value. it's amazing. You know, during this pandemic, I've not been able to get back into the prisons, and I've been doing some community restorative justice work. And what I really discovered is that there's just as much pain and hurt and trauma in our communities as there is in our jails. You know, they may be responded to differently so that people are not locked up in their physical body, but they're still locked in their hearts and minds and spirits. And it's a lot harder working with people in community than people who are incarcerated. And I think it's so necessary. I think restorative justice is one way of healing the planet. I understand there are others. Restorative justice is the way that resonates with my heart. And as long as I can keep that in my heart, I can share that with others. And I love this sharing. I love this coming together. I recognize that Native Americans are indigenous cultures everywhere. Come from a place of soul and spirit and body. And that's kind of been taught out of me in school. You know, no one is born a criminal. No one is born a murderer. That has to be taught. That has to come from the environment. No child is born thinking, I will kill myself. Yet I have known 14-year-olds who have paid for their own funeral because they don't believe that they'll live to be an adult or that their family can pay for them to be buried. And there's something very, very challenging about children who want to die. Somewhere we have not done our due diligence with our children. And it's our children who are our future. So we have to think about that. You know, I know it says that 7 generations we have to think about. And I've known 7 generations of my family. And the blessing is my great-grandmother told me things that I went to college to learn. I went to college in eugenics, you know. My grandmother told me apples don't fall far from the tree. I know eugenics involves more than that, but that's so encapsulates it, the whole idea that we are, you know, we're one. The common law of the tribes is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl, because I think it could just be the common law for humanity. And I think that those of us who have been treated as if we're subhuman have another way of being that allows us to know the truth. Native Americans, African Americans, neither of us are Americans by choice. Being a citizen of America was forced on us, either through indigenous genocide and subjugation and colonization, or kidnapping and slavery. We're forced Americans. Yet we keep our dignity, we keep our pride. I wish I had a language to speak other than English. That's all I was taught. I have no idea what my ancestors spoke because I have no idea of which tribe my ancestors came from. I do know that my great-grandmother was Choctaw and, of course, Black. My grandfather spoke Choctaw. He was born in Mississippi, but that's all I know. And I think that restorative practices restores us to our authentic self, to who we are, beyond what people might think about us, beyond what we might think about ourselves. The truth of who we are emerges, and it's beautiful. We are all really beautiful. And I've learned to see the beauty in everybody and everything I have. And it's through learning and practicing restorative values. So, there's very little I can say about the circle that Cheryl hasn't said, other than it's a powerful vehicle. And I love the idea that I get in the circle and begin telling people I cry, so everybody won't be surprised when the tears come. And, I cry, and I do cry, and that I'm not the boss of them. Just kind of think of me as a guide, keeping the traffic flowing so there's no traffic jams, and only doing that when necessary. And being a peer as much as possible. It's a tricky fish because being a peer and being a leader is it's a double role. But as long as my hearing is in my heart and my words are from my heart, I stay in the place of oneness with everyone in that circle. So the power of the circle is incredible. It is powerful. It is powerful for transformation. It is powerful to resolve difficulties. It is powerful for community. And it is powerful for peace, to establish peace where there is none, to establish wellness where there is illness. All of these things can happen in a circle. But more than anything, healing can happen, and wholeness can become a way of being. And that's my prayer for everyone, that we heal, not just the human species, but all life, including the planet, and life that may be beyond this planet, that all life, seen and unseen, can heal all life. So I'm wanting this to spread to the planet, to the way we treat our planet. I envision someday biomimicry will be the only way we produce anything. It's not today, but it's a thought and it's an idea, and it can happen. So I'm just going to end saying I feel very privileged. I don't know, my sense of, gosh, who am I to be on this call talking to so many people? Who am I? I'm just this little ghetto girl from Oakland who recognizes that I have value. And I recognize that about everyone, but especially those of us who've been subjugated and colonized and demonized and treated as if we're not quite human. I recognize the beauty in each and every one. So it's just been an incredible experience just to be here and talk. And thank you, Seth, so much. You definitely are an angel, and it's interesting. I'm smiling because I'm looking at your picture, which I think looks like a movie star. And I'm complete. I'm going to go on mute now.
I'm laughing and crying all the way along here. It's Consuelo Valdez put in our text, Bonnie, you are such a brave and courageous person. You inspire me. I couldn't say it better. Thank you so much, Bonnie, for speaking from your heart that way and being the kind of person that you are. Yeah, I had a really good photographer for that picture, trying to look my best on my Zoom camera off. If anybody needs, I'll recommend her. So yeah, Grandma Mona, thank you, thank you for your patience all the way to this point, and for coming on here. And you're the youngest grandma. I believe, not to out anybody's ages here, but you're over there in Arizona, and you're a force in the world. I know you work on justice, not only indigenous issues, but also immigration justice, and people who are suffering under oppression and unwise public policy all over, including environmental justice, and advocating for the water. You have that beautiful picture behind you of Havasupai, where you're from and your ancestors are from there, down in what we call the Grand Canyon, where there's so much beauty. So thank you for being here, and please know we have plenty of time, so take your time, and I'll turn it over to you there.
First of all, I'd just like to greet each and every one of you. Good day. And also give thanks to the good Mustamho Pakiwa, the creator, for this beautiful day and all the divine creations, the water, the air, the fire, the earth, all these things that give us our life. And I'm also grateful to be speaking to you from Tucson, Arizona, the traditional land and territory of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the Yowemi, the Pasquayaki. And I have the pleasure of being connected to these beautiful people here in this part of Arizona, southern Arizona. And I am Havasupai, people of the blue-green water, from down in the bottom of the Grand Canyon on my mother's side. So I'm from the Water Clan, and on my father's side, I'm Hopi and Tewa. My paternal grandmother is from the Sun Clan, and my paternal grandfather is the Tewa Tobacco Clan. And so I'm also a enrolled member of the Colorado River Indian tribe. And so, one of the things that I always think about us indigenous people and how we identify ourselves. We identify ourselves from the water that we come from and the land that we come from. And we have these sacred bloodline ancestry relationships that are related to these waters. For me, the Colorado River and the waters of the Havasupai. And so my mother always told me that so everything of the water are my relatives, and everything of the land are my relatives, and the ones that fly in the air are my relatives. And then also like the plant life that are my relatives. And so I'm really grateful, that I could be part of this beautiful discussion here, dialogue we're having, and give greetings to our sister Grandmother Margaret Behan and sister Cheryl Fairbanks, and our dear sister Bonnie Wills, and all of the work that Life Comes From It does in creating opportunities for us to have voice about our concerns and our existence in this world. I'm doing work that is right now. There are certain things that are happening among our people. And just yesterday, I had the honor to be invited to attend a San Carlos Apache sunrise dance, which is a coming out ceremony, rites of passage for a young girl becoming a woman. And it was held at a place called Oak Flats. Oak Flats is the holy ground of the San Carlos Apache. From time immemorial, they have lived there, and they have had their ceremonies there as part of their creation story, emergence into this world, and it's their connection to their ancestry and their ways of being in as San Carlos Apache. And this place is right now being targeted to become the world's largest open pit copper mine. And the people, the Apache people, are very concerned about it because this is a place where they have their ceremonies at their holy ground there. There are oak trees that are hundreds of years old, these giant oak trees. And from the oak tree comes the acorn. And from the acorn, that's their ceremonial food, as well as their food of their everyday diet. And they use it, they prepare it in certain ways, but before they harvest it, there are ceremonies, there are prayers, there's offerings, there is even dances that are made to honor that sacredness of the land there, and the sacred medicine of the oak tree, of the acorn that they use. And on that land, there's a little spring that they use to get the water that they use in their ceremonial practices. And then there's also other medicine plants that are there, as well as certain food plants that they go to harvest and they use to eat, that they prepare certain special foods from these plants that grow there. And so there is an effort to stop this permitting of the mine. And so the gathering there, some of the local tribal people there are very concerned that this may be the last sunrise dance that they will have there. And so I'm mentioning this because this is a current concern of many tribal nations in terms of justice, in terms of our human rights, in terms of our civil liberties, our right to our religious freedom, our right to have our religious practices and beliefs available to us, to be able to have access to these places that are our cultural heritage and spiritual connection of who we are as Indigenous people. All over the world, there are people like us. There are Indigenous people who have not left their home. They have not left their place of origin. They can tell you where they came into, how they came into the world, where they came in, their origin story, their creation story. They can go to that place. They have their relatives, their ancestors, that they can say that's where they are. They have their relationship with the medicine plants and the foods and the animal life that are there, that they have learned how to live in harmony with and learn how to survive with through the gifts of the Creator that put them where they are. And so these are some of the big concerns. And you know, when we talk about some of the behavioral health issues that have been mentioned, you know, there's also, you know, these historical events that have led up to, you know, much of what we're experiencing today, and still are experiencing this removal or forced removal, as Bonnie, you mentioned, you know, and so, you know, it's really a big concern to me and many others I know that are involved in either standing at the front line or being, you know, outspoken about the concerns and issues of our Indigenous people. And it's beyond me to understand that we as Indigenous people are expected to go into a court of law that is absolutely foreign to us, using man-made laws, men making decisions about whether or not we as human beings, Indigenous people, have rights, have a right to have our holy ground or from now to eternity, the way our ancestors did during their time. They took care of it. They passed the knowledge, the practices, the beliefs on through the generations, clear up to now. And yet, through what's called the justice system, I say just us system, where our Indigenous people's very existence is being determined by a court of law that is not of our making or not of our understanding or of our worldview, in understanding how we have this, when we say water is life, when we say our Mother Earth is sacred, we have that, it's ingrained in our genetics. We've had that, we live on this land. We have that sacred connection with the roots of this plants, the medicines, the foods that we eat. It's us. It is our life. But yet we are faced with this huge challenge on how are we going to defend ourselves? How are we going to walk into a court of law that has no sensitivity to our needs, even the needs of our relatives that are incarcerated, who have had to go into these institutions and have lived institutional lives, not being, not having the advocacy that other people may have because it's not available to them. And so these are some things I think about in terms of justice for Indigenous people. It's really a important thing for us as grandmothers to be the ones to step up and speak out. The International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers that was formed in 2004, when we came together, we had not even planned to create a council, but the council came together. We say it was like a divine intervention. There was a spirit that moved us, and we created this statement, which I believe goes along with what we're talking about today. We, the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers, represent a global alliance of prayer, education, and healing for our Mother Earth, all her inhabitants, all the children, and for the next 7 generations to come. We are deeply concerned with the unprecedented destruction of our Mother Earth and the destruction of Indigenous ways of life. We believe the teachings of our ancestors will light our way through an uncertain future. We look to further our vision through the realization of projects that protect our diverse cultures, lands, and medicines, language, and ceremonial ways of prayer, and through projects that educate and nurture our children. So this is the work of the grandmothers. And I'm glad to say that there have been many other grandmothers who have approached us and have said they want to join the Grandmothers Council. And we say that there's plenty of work for all of us in this world, and that grandmothers' councils can be formed wherever you're at. And so we encourage grandmothers to join together and create their grandmother councils. And so far, I believe there's councils that have been formed in Europe, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Spain, in Africa, in Gabon, Africa, and in South America, and in Japan, and also here in the United States, there's grandmothers councils that have been forming. And so we're all in this together, as the late grandmother Agnes Baker Pilgrim would say. She would say, we're all in this leaky canoe together, and that we must all be supportive of one another, encourage one another to do the work and uphold our responsibilities as grandmothers to love and care for our families, our children, our people, our nations, and the world. And so those are some of the things that the Grandmothers Council have been focused on and working on. And one of our biggest concerns here is that we're able to preserve and protect our earth-based medicines, our waters, our lands and territories, so that our future generations and that are yet to come, the ones we will not see, that they will enjoy our home, the home that Creator has given us. And And we are also keeping in connection with what's going on in the world so that we can focus our prayers on those concerns, not only for our loved ones and relatives that are having difficulty in their life, but also the ones who are in the front lines as protectors of the water and the land, as well as the ones who are sitting at the table who are negotiating these concerns with the decision makers. And I also want to acknowledge and give thanks to all of our leaders, our leaders of our people before us. They were the ones who were the ones who had to stand up to the colonization, and they were smart enough when they negotiated treaties, even though today many of the treaties are not being honored, they still upheld our treaty, our rights to our land, our rights to our water, and our rights to our cultural and spiritual beliefs and practices. So these are the work that they did that we continue to uphold. And I believe one of you mentioned here this morning that, in spite of all the challenges, and even today, this pandemic that's occurring, in spite of all this, we persevere. We have strong hearts, strong minds, strong spirits, and strong bodies to persevere and to continue to move forward because of our belief in our prayers that the good Creator is going to be kind to us and take care of us. And then also the prayers of all of our ancestors that have been made, our sacred sites that we're standing and praying, making offerings to, or praying at, and the sacred ceremonies that are being done to uphold our original instructions in how to live here on Mother Earth, as well as being open to sharing with others, because we were told that there would come a time when the ones who forgot how to follow the original instructions and how to live and care for Mother Earth would forget, and that we as Indigenous people would be kind and to remind them of these traditional instructions that we were all given when we came into this world here on Mother Earth. So I just wanted to say that much, and I give thanks for this opportunity. Thank you, nephew Seth, for your beautiful vision to bring us together, as well as all of the other dialogues that you have created for us to give voice to our concerns. So thank you so much, and blessings to each and every one of you.
Thank you, Grandma Mona. Really powerful to listen to you. Appreciate everything you said there. I'm gonna just exercise some moderator privilege, co-moderator now with Cheryl, and just see if I can keep us on just a moment longer. I want to just give an opportunity for anybody who's on the call here, if you'd like to ask a question or say something, and at least for each of you grandmas here to be able to respond to each other, say anything else that you'd like to say. There's been so much value to this point already. So I'm just gonna take a moment, and if any of your grandmas would like to say something, please feel free. And anybody of any of the attendees, if you can type into the Q&A or the chat or raise your hand. Thank you. So I'll just ask this question. How can we support you? How can we support the work that you're doing, the vision that you have? And maybe with that, how do we carry on that legacy of the path that you have traced to this point with your lives? You know, this wisdom that you're sharing with us. How can we carry that on? So I'll say that to each of you here. Thank you.
This is Bonnie. And I'd like to thank again you, Seth, and Life Comes From It. And of course, the Ahimsa Collective. Ahimsa means do no harm or non-violence. And the thing that Grandma Mona said, that we all must speak out, we all must respond to the injustice that is occurring on this planet. It's imperative in order to have peace, to have justice. We must be willing and have the courage to name the injustice. And the injustice is everywhere. And we don't name it often enough, and don't acknowledge it often enough, and don't talk about the trauma it induces in each and every one of us, the perpetrators and the people who are recipients of it, of injustice. So I just wanted to say that I want to see peace and love from everyone. And I want to see folks that believe justice means just us. I want to see them heal, to know it's not just us. Justice is for everyone and everything, for this land, for the waters, for the planet. That's what it's for. And I'm dedicated in this life to be committed, to speak up, to support anyone and everyone who seeks support that I can support. And my prayers are always for justice and peace, and it will continue to be. And I'm complete.
This is Grandma Margaret. I want to say modeling and participating in my first with my people, the Cheyenne people, the Arapaho people. I have understood and found in my life that I had to be at peace with myself, and to find that peace with my children, and still have to make amends to my son, you know. It's we lost my daughter, and when those times come up to model and demonstrate how to be in a family when there's a disruption, tragedy. And like to this pandemic too, is in that time to be in solitude. I had to reach out by phone and call my family and check in on them to see how they're doing, and lots of anger at this point. You know, we made it through. They say we made it through the pandemic, you know, the lockdown part, and now we've been still know people that hasn't been vaccinated. And this is always the subject here on the tribe. You know, there's a tracking system now, and people in confusion, my people in confusion. So I have to find myself dealing one-to-one with my family members, with my extended family, with my tribal people and my community here. I just am amazed how I can just be in their presence, just like Cheryl had said, you know, just to be present. And you, Bonnie, to be present with people, to talk about these issues that Mona, you know, it's talking about, to be daring to talk about these issues and want to find in dialogue a place where we can make peace, you know, that that's what I find myself looking for in my own children and my daughter and son. I have one daughter left and one son. And I have 11 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. And in these great-grandchildren, you know, they're just happy. And I look at them, you know, they're healing in some way, you know, they're innocent. They don't need to know what's going on, you know, with the pandemic, you know, at this time. And they're at their age and trying to have a leverage of how to care for my family, you know, as their elder, and to be strong, you know, and to encourage, you know. Sometimes I find myself, you know, just even asking them, you know, how can you be strong at this time, you know? And there's one family of mine, they say, well, you're the elder, you should be the one doing this. You're the one that should be reaching out, you know. They point me, they single me out. And I say, yes, you know, to all what you're saying, I have surrendered. Yes, I'm the elder. And yes, I'm doing what you're wanting me to do. You know, I'm talking to you. I'm totally listening to you. You know, there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of pain. There's people that can talk and people cannot talk. And so there's atmosphere of not knowing what to do. It's just like the rug has been pulled out under us, and now what do you do? So I have to really refer to my grandmother, my aunts, my mother. What would my mother do? What would in this situation? All I know is to continue to ask, call them, even though, you know, they said a mean thing to me, not to hold the grudge, you know, to call them and say, here I am again. You know, yesterday you were in the anger place, you know, and I understood it. I had to drag that stuff back out again, so that they can have a difference in another day, another time. So I depend on these things, and the environment, and read into that situation, the moment, what are we doing here? How are we doing this? Where are our feelings? What am I saying to you, And my granddaughter, she's the oldest, she's the one that keeps us together. She's 31 years old. And I tell her that, I said, Ilana, you're the one that really keeps us together, our family. And this is what my grandmother used to say. There was only one in the family that kept us together. And then there was one that separated us, wanted us to be fighting each other. We weren't, there was, in the trauma, there was something that we had accepted or moved, just did, out of automatic emotions, and just to have a fight, have an argument, and then we're good again. The honeymoon effect comes, and there's this process of behavior, and I really watched that with my family, my people, and my people can't really, I tell them, we can't really blame each other, right? Who are you blaming? You want to blame somebody. We're going to have elections, they're going ahead and having elections, tribal elections, in October 5th, we vote 12,000 Southern Cheyennes for our leaders. And everybody brings out the dirt, on the candidates, or the family say, this is my family. And it seems like everybody shifts in automatic behavior, this is how we've been behaving, so we're going into it again. And then, so I noticed that, so I have to come in there and be brave, and I have to tell them, look for the good. Can you find the good? What is the good that you're doing, you're creating? And I can draw on my grandmother and my mother. They did these things, where you can go and where you cannot go. So I use that a lot. So I want to say that, at this time when this pandemic and this uncertainty, confusion, so really depending on my culture, really depending on our ways, just like this ceremony, we needed it. I had a day, 3 days of 4 days of feeling, free or something released, from me. I can't explain it, but then again, today I had to be careful again. The pandemic is here, a different version of it. So always having to be alert and reading the behavior and where I can go. So I want to add that, Thank you, I'm finished.
Ganesh Chish, this is Cheryl. I just wanted to thank the grandmothers and Seth. And I know someone asked about how you start the circle. There's a whole process that we've used for starting the circle. And I always start with prayer. I've tried it with prayer. I've tried it without prayer. Guess what works? Prayer. Some of my students, I've taught this at the law school, and one of my students did not want to start with prayer, but he used poetry and music, and it was beautiful to set the sacred space. So we're learning from each other. And I learned so much from you all today. And Seth, you asked, how can, we all help each other? I think we should have gathering of the grandmothers. I know we're going to try to have a gathering of the peacemakers, but I thought the gathering of the grandmothers, because we all hold our grandmas so close to our hearts. And they were the ones that really raised us. And in our way, we have to give our thanks to our grandparents always. And sometimes the younger generation forgets that, you know, they did it, they did this, they did that. And we always have to credit our grandparents. And so I'm going to choose to those who went before us so we could be here, and especially our grandparents. And in closing, I wanted just from me, I learned this from a prayer coming in from the Apache people when my husband was so sick, and everything was about physical, you know, he's going into the hospital, physical, this and that. And, you know, it was like overwhelming, and just trying to keep our kids above board and our grandkids, great grands. I have 4 children and 17 grandkids and 9 greats. I don't know how I got to be a grandma so fast, but it happened in a flash. And but the Apache people sent this to my husband, and they said Bijaya. And everyone say that in your heart, Bijaya, and just resonate with that language, because the language is medicinal, Bijaya. And what it means, and it's so different than Western medicine, but it means heal the heart and the rest will follow. I'm probably murdering it a little, but Bijaya, let us heal our hearts and the rest will follow. And I thank all the grandmothers and Seth, because we had that imaginary thread of love, the kindness, the forgiveness, the protection, the apologies, and the thankfulness. So Bijaya, Ganesh Chish.
You're muted, Mona, in case you want to say something. There you go.
I just wanted to say again, thank you to each and every one of you. And, you know, one of the things that I always say when people ask me, what can we do? And I always say that, you know, when it comes to that question of which sometimes comes up, and it's who gave you the right or who gave you the authority to say anything, to speak. And Havasupai sister and I, we decided that our response would be my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, my future generations. They give me the authority to speak on their behalf. It's my moral responsibility to stand up for their protection. Like a mother bear, no mother bear will allow anyone to come into her cave and make a mess of things. And so we must exercise our moral authority wherever we are, when we are seeing that our home place needs to be brought back in order. And I have my late grandmother, Mona Polacca. She was our moral authority. And when I was growing up, she was the one, she could call counsel for the family. She would call counsel if there was some concern with the family. There was maybe one of my aunts or uncles was doing something that wasn't acceptable according to our ways of living. So we would have these family councils and have like the talking circle like you did, Bonnie. And so you know, that's where you can start, is to recognize your connection with your immediate family and your own communities and your because as my good brother Chief Phil Lane Jr. says, the honor of one is the honor of all, the hurt of one is the hurt of all. And so I just wanted to say that here. Thank you.
Thank you all the way around. I wish I could say thank you in Tewa and Cheyenne and Tlingit, Gonaschish and Bonnie, whatever language it was your ancestors spoke, you know, acknowledge them, acknowledge all of our ancestors here that, you know, I believe they prayed for us, you know, one day we'd be able to be here together like this, have a conversation like this, you know, and it really made me feel good. So it's a blessing. It's a bless my day. And everybody who attended, you know, thank you so much. And, you know, and thank you to each of your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren for giving you the authority to say everything that you said today. I really love that, Mona, you know. So I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. I can't say it enough, and just bless you. May you have a wonderful day. You know, I can't imagine a better beginning to our autumn season. So, you know, may we come back together again soon and continue to bring all the good energy that you do out into the world.
It's believe.
So I'm going to close it now and take care, everybody. Thank you again.